everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So in this one here, I want to talk about episode 4 of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon Season 2, and obviously this will contain spoilers for the episode, so I do have to warn you for that. This is going to be my overall review of the episode, but there's a couple of moments in here that I will be doing some videos on later on tonight. There's a couple of deaths here that I do want to talk about more in depth. There's like some really big moments that I really want to get into, so expect a couple of videos breaking down a lot of that later on tonight. I mean, I don't know how to feel about some moments. Like, there's certain moments that honestly are really great. Like, honestly, this episode was really great. The best episode of the season so far, but it's only because of certain moments that happen. But there's decisions made, I feel like, with the story and some of the pacing here that I just really have some issues with, and it's really concerning overall, I would say, for the show. And so, yeah, I do want to get into that. So before we go any further, obviously, make sure to be a subscriber if you want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. But let's get into the episode here. So the episode begins with a really haunting opening of really, honestly, some of the best visuals we've ever seen on The Walking Dead. I think the nighttime shot of the nest, just seeing the moonlight and everything, like, honestly, really incredible. When I first saw that, I was like, wow, this is going to be a really epic episode. And honestly, looking at how much happened in this episode, this really was like truly a really crazy, like, amazing episode. It's just, again, with certain decisions made and the characters that did die here and how certain storylines are being wrapped up because of how fast a lot of these moments have happened within like 4 episodes. Honestly, it is overall concerning for me in terms of how David Isabelle, the showrunner, handles a lot of the story here, because I just think that certain moments that happen a little bit too fast. It feels like the pacing here for this season is just like way too fast. Like, honestly, there's just so much happening all the time, and I'm kind of disappointed in how Madame Genet's arc ended, and also Isabelle's arc, and so we'll get to that eventually. But Genet, she creates superwalkers, a really cool scene here, and Carol actually did get shot, I guess, with the serum, and I was really confused about that. So she gets shot with it, but she takes it out immediately. So to me, I'm just like, I mean, I guess technically maybe she would have been fine, but I feel like there's also, like, there should be some effects from that. I feel like maybe it takes like a couple of seconds before it actually works or something like that. But honestly, like, that was just a very weird scene. Like, she takes the needle out right away, but it's just, I don't know. I'll overlook that. That was totally fine. I do like how Cadron actually was being used to like lead the walkers to the nest. And so Genet was honestly just going to kill everybody. She was going to kill Cadron. She was going to kill Carol. Like, she doesn't care at all. And I really do like that about the character. Like, she's just making like these really crazy decisions just like that. Like, really, I feel like on The Walking Dead, they would keep characters alive for a little bit longer than, you know, what made sense for like the character. But Genet is just like, no, we're going to kill this person. We're going to kill this person. And that was really cool. And I also liked how Carol did save Cadron, because I think the way that the scene played out, I mean, yeah, just a really cool opening. And so, yeah, seeing the walkers running at night and running after Carol and Cadron, you know, as they're driving towards the nest, that was very cool. Like, honestly, that made the walkers just absolutely terrifying. And that's what's really cool about that, is like, imagine if the super walkers were just all like that's just what the walkers were in general, right? Like, all walkers were super walkers. Like, that would make survival honestly way too terrifying. Like, I just think that it would really elevate everything here, you know, on the show. But yeah, they end up getting to the gates of the nest, and this is something that I think is definitely an issue, and it was something that immediately when it happened, I was like, all right, this is definitely a problem this season. And it was the fact that the cannon from Pouvoir, I guess, blew up the door so that Carol and Cadron could actually go to the nest. I get the thinking of like, well, they're doing that because, like, no matter who's driving it, if it's Carol or Cadron or whoever, like, I guess Cadron couldn't drive the vehicle, but even if it's Carol or someone from Pouvoir, like, they want the super walkers to be going there anyway. So overall, they don't really care about that. But still, I think the convenience of that moment was just a little, I don't know. Honestly, I really wasn't the biggest fan of that. I think that it just allowed the characters to survive like so easily. Like, and that's the thing too. Like, I think with this show, like, with how convenient things have been in this season specifically, and that's the thing. In season 1, this wasn't an issue. But season 2, this has really been a big issue here, where like they run into certain problems and these issues are solved so fast, and like the pacing is so quick. With how Carol saw the plane, I mean, there's been so many conveniences this season where, you know, a couple of them I think you can sort of overlook overall. Like, you're like, all right, I mean, it makes sense. Honestly, Carol seeing the plane, as much as that was an issue, I can overlook that overall, because I'm just like, well, you obviously have to get her there no matter what. And yes, maybe it's unrealistic to see her get to France, you know, I guess just on a plane like that, even though I know it is possible, but it's still kind of unrealistic in a way. I think that, doing that, your focus for the rest of the season should be to make every moment very believable and not make things way too convenient for the characters, because then it just becomes very ridiculous and you just sort of have people laugh about it, right? And so I laughed at that moment because I was like, there's no way that Carol and Cadrone were just that lucky that the door blew up and they were able to drive through. And not only that, when they were going through the nest, everyone was shooting at them and they somehow survived everything, like all the way to the other side of the nest where they eventually, obviously, they got out of the vehicle. And Cadrone's really amazing. I will say that. I'm really happy that he's sort of a good guy now. I think that's going to be really incredible for the story. I did see in the episode 5 trailer that he's actually going to be there. So yeah, I don't know if he is going to die at all this season. Like, we'll have to wait and see. But definitely I have some issues here overall with the pacing and the conveniences of the story. And I think that, again, it's the 6-episode thing that I think if this was 8 episodes, if this was 10 episodes, a lot of these moments would happen in like later episodes and there would be a lot more depth there and you could actually focus on explaining some of these scenes a little bit better. And I just think that because, again, they have to get to this point and they're sort of mapping out the whole season, the whole story over 6 episodes, it's like, okay, well, we're going to have to get to this point right away. So this is just going to have to happen here. And then, I just think it's not the best approach overall to the season. And again, for season 1, I was okay with that because I think for season 1, you were introducing the whole story. You were sort of, having Daryl go to France for the first time and introducing all these newer characters and everything. So there wasn't a lot of expectation. There wasn't a lot more story there. It was like everything was new, right? So it was really exciting the entire time. You sort of built up this arc, even though, Daryl getting to the nest, I think happened pretty fast, I would say, over those 6 episodes. I still think that was fine. I think the pacing overall for season 1 was overall fine. But for season 2, you have characters in all these places that I just really don't understand the decision to do certain things here. And so let's get into the next part of the story here, which is Isabelle. She says she doesn't really believe in the nest anymore. And when she was saying that, I knew she was dead. And then it basically happens. You have Laurent kill Isabelle. Like, yes, she's not technically dead yet. She does survive a little bit longer, but I was so frustrated with it. Honestly, like, I do not like this scene because first of all, he feels bad after. And I'm just like, wait, what? And it's so confusing with Laurent because the character, like, again, he really has his faith and whatnot, and when you see him at the end of the episode, like, he seems like a villain, like, just completely, which obviously he knew Isabelle, so I think doing that, obviously, he kind of felt bad and whatnot. The way the scene plays out, and the fact that you have that happen in the very beginning, just kind of felt very disrespectful to Isabelle in general, because she's such a big character on this show, and so I think she deserved a lot better than what she got here in this episode. I think that she should still be alive on the show. She should still be a really big part of this show overall. Like, I honestly, like, she really was a big highlight of season 1, one of the best characters, if not the best character of season 1. So I think the way they killed her off in this episode, I just wasn't a fan of. Her storyline this season overall, I wasn't a fan of, and I will do a video talking about this a lot more in depth later on, but I just wasn't a fan of how all this played out. And honestly, this is most of what I didn't like about the episode. It was really up until this moment and certain decisions. I wasn't a fan of how all of this played out, but for the rest of the episode, honestly, really great. And you really see that in a scene where Carol saves Isabelle. Like, this just really showed me the potential of having Daryl, Carol, Isabelle, Laurent, and, Falou, and I guess Cadrone, this new group that could have been, I guess going to Spain or whatever the story's going to be. Like, having Carol and Isabelle together in the couple of scenes that we had them in, like, honestly, really incredible. You saw the dynamic between the characters. You really saw how that story would work. And I just think that it was, again, wasted potential right there. Like, I just, it's frustrating because that scene was so great. Seeing all of that was absolutely amazing. And again, this was the first moment of the episode where I was like, okay, this episode's getting really good. Even though it seemed like Isabelle was going to die, it was exciting to see Carol and Isabelle because I think the chemistry there, especially if Daryl was there and what the story could have been with like Laurent and like everyone else, I think honestly, we could have had such an amazing group. Like, if you think of Daryl, Falou, Carol, Isabelle, Laurent, and Cadrone, like, maybe that could still happen, without Isabelle, but I think that we should have at least seen all those characters together traveling to Spain, and then maybe Isabelle's a big death in season 3 or something like that. I think killing her off this early in the way that they did it. Again, very randomly, because Losang just decided to, I mean, he was just really upset out of nowhere. So like, I have a lot of things I want to say, and so I will talk about this a lot more in depth, but as you can tell, I'm not really that happy about, you know, some decisions that they made here. Dead City looks really great, honestly, and the direction of the show at the very end of this episode, I feel very mixed on, but I could see the potential there and where they can go with the story. They talked about certain things with Genet and certain things with her backstory that I think hints at, you know, a couple of things for season 3, or at least I could anyways. And so there's a lot here to like, definitely, but obviously you can tell I'm not really that happy with Isabelle's death. And there's a couple of things like that that happen in this episode. So yeah, let's just move on here. Again, I'll talk about this a little bit more in depth later on today, but we do see Daryl actually killing a bunch of walkers. That was all really awesome. I think just, you know, the fact that that one person from the nest was like, you know, running away from the super walker, ends up behind the gate, I guess, and is like, you know, I guess I'm fine here, but can see the super walker and is just absolutely terrified, looks at Daryl and is like, you know what, Daryl can save me. And so Daryl, yeah, really cool to see how he takes out all the walkers. That was really amazing. And then we see the reunion, and I wasn't expecting that. I honestly got a little emotional watching that. Like I wasn't expecting that. I knew Carol was near, like I knew that she was in the building, but because of what happened with Isabelle, I wasn't even thinking about the reunion. I was just so upset about that. And then obviously Carol and Daryl reunite, which Daryl was just killing all these walkers trying to get away. We did see that Carol, you know, mentioned to Isabelle before that she was trying to find her friend named Daryl or whatever. It made sense on how everything happened here. And so Daryl seeing Carol after killing all those walkers, like, I really wonder what it was like from Carol's point of view. And you don't have to show that, that's fine. It's more of my thoughts. Like, for Carol, she would have seen Daryl first, right? We saw this from Daryl's point of view, where Daryl was killing all the walkers and all of a sudden he killed whatever walker, and then yeah, Carol was just right there, and it was so surprising. Again, for me, I wasn't expecting that. I was like out of breath when I first saw it. I was like, wait, what? Like, it just happened out of nowhere. And it was really emotional. It was really amazing to see the characters together. And I think that the rest of the episode here, I think that's what, you know, gives me hope, I guess, overall for the show, is seeing Daryl and Carol together and seeing their amazing chemistry and how all that story works really well, because it really, honestly, it's amazing stuff for the rest of the episode. And when you see Daryl and Isabelle's final scene together, again, you just sort of feel like she died way too soon. The feeling I had was, I mean, as sad as it was, it did really feel like the show just wanted to get rid of the character. Like, it just, I don't know if that's what it was, but it just like, maybe it was too powerful to have Daryl, Carol, and Isabelle together, you know, for the story. I have no idea, and she died very randomly because Losang was upset. Like, it seemed like they were trying to rush her final scene. And then, I mean, obviously when you have Daryl and Carol together later on, like, all of it is awesome, but it's just, I don't know, I'm not a fan of Isabelle's death. I think that they really, like, they mishandled the character a lot. Again, it's not on the same level of Carl's death. That was like a really, really bad decision, but this is still a bad decision. And then the next scene happens here, and then we see Daryl and Carol leave the nest very fast, and there's actually a mention of Connie and Judith, which is absolutely incredible, but Daryl doesn't really care here. You know, he's looking for Laurent, and I like, you know, that decision to make Daryl not really care about any of that, because for him, obviously, he just lost Isabelle. I think, you know, as bad of a decision as that is, you have to make up for it for having Daryl just be completely stressed out. Like, Daryl is just stressed out that he can't even focus on anything. Like, he just has to find Laurent. Like, his mind is just everywhere, and you can see that, like, he's really stressed out. He's not focusing on anything. And he actually says to Carol, like, I'm really thankful that you came here to see me. You know, I'm so happy that you're here. And I think it took him a bit to actually realize that, and I think that's very natural for the character because of how he was feeling. He was stressed out, he was overwhelmed. I like how all of that played out. I think that made a lot of sense. But, you know, we do see Genet take over the nest, basically. I mean, I guess temporarily. We see what happens later on in the episode. That I really liked. I thought that was really cool. But honestly, I'm not a fan of how the nest battle played out overall, because based off of what happens later on in the episode with Madame Genet's death, I'm really concerned about the Super Walker storyline now, and certain explanations that I guess we're not ever going to get. And again, I have a lot of issues with decisions made for certain storylines. I think that some stuff was absolutely incredible. Honestly, I was a huge fan of Carol and Daryl together in a lot of moments of this episode, but I just, yeah, in terms of the nest battle and the Super Walkers, like, the Super Walkers weren't even that exciting. Like, honestly, the way they built it up in season 1, it was so incredible. And so far this season, yes, a couple of moments were really amazing, but overall, it's not that fun of a storyline anymore. Honestly, it's really not. But we do see Carol and Daryl talking. You know, the tone is a little bit off, I will say, right? Because Isabelle just died and they're sort of joking and all that. But I think it was just them trying to get Daryl and Carol to, I guess act like themselves from like The Walking Dead and whatnot, right? But I just think because of Isabelle's death, because of what just happened, having, them laugh about some stuff just made no sense because it's literally the morning after. Like, they should be absolutely destroyed right now and not joking around about stuff. Like, I don't know. I thought the tone was off there. And I think that, again, if Isabelle was still alive and she was there, walking with them, then all that made sense. Maybe Isabelle sort of watching them talk about stuff, and then, maybe like were Isabelle in that moment sort of seeing their interaction and their chemistry, right? Carol actually mentioned some stuff about her backstory a little bit that I thought was kind of cool. She mentions that they never really went anywhere before. I think that Daryl asking her about that was a little, I guess off, because I would say that Daryl should know that already about Carol. But, like lines like that, I can sort of forgive overall, because I think that it's just a way to get Carol to talk about, I guess what things were like for her. And that's why I want these spinoffs, is because I want to learn more about these characters, right? Just their backstories and all that, because obviously they weren't going to get into that on The Walking Dead. There's way too many characters. And so we actually learned here, though, that the person that came back, it wasn't Rick, it wasn't Dwight or Morgan. It was a feeling that came back. And so I'm, honestly, I think the explanation was fine. I wasn't going to be a fan of the fact that, if Carol knew that Rick and Michonne came back, that, she saw them off screen, that reunion actually happened off screen. I would be so upset about that. So the fact that, like she doesn't know, I'm happy about that overall. But it is frustrating because they knew what they were doing when they set that up in episode 5 of season 1. Like, they knew that everyone would be like, oh, that has to be Rick. Like, Rick came back, and obviously it was building up to the ones who lived. So that's frustrating. It really is frustrating in terms of that. But I like the explanation overall, because again, if Carol knew, I would be really upset about that. But most of this episode honestly takes place with Daryl and Carol, I guess, finding this couple, I guess, at this place. And immediately I felt like something was off. It just kind of felt like there was something off here. And I didn't buy it for a second that Laurent was actually there for a day. But based off of how the episode actually played out, I guess he was there for a day. And so, yeah, really interesting. Daryl does say, though, that he doesn't want the responsibility of looking after Laurent. And I really like this line where Carol's like, well, so what, you don't want to end up like me? And then Daryl was like, like, I wonder if Daryl was feeling like that. Like, Daryl saw what Carol's been through, like with Sophia and whatnot, and is like, I don't want to deal with that. And so maybe he has a fear of certain things like that because of that. And so he kind of upset Carol in that moment. So that's why Carol was just honest and literally said, like, what, so you don't want to end up like me? And Daryl was like, no. Like, I thought that was great. Honestly, really great. A really honest moment there. And also, one thing here I gotta point out, while Carol and Daryl were working on the car, they were wearing like these really big jackets. I will say it's really hard to believe that they're actually working on the car while wearing those jackets. The scene where we see Carol actually thinking of Sophia's death, I thought that was really incredible. And honestly, Carol's bond with that woman there, really great. I think that she learned a lot, and I think that's one of the things that I liked about this episode. And that's what I mean by these seasons should be like 8 to 10 episodes long, because I feel like the Nest battle and everything that happened there should have been like its own episode. And then this episode here with Carol and Daryl, I guess meeting these two other characters should have been another episode, because these character moments like this are incredible. And this is the stuff that you really want to see. And so Carol learning a lot from this woman here, I thought was just really great. A lot of really great character development stuff. Honestly, that was my favorite part of the episode. And then seeing Carol and Daryl argue too, like that was really great. If it's too much or whatever Daryl was saying about, starting the car and all of that, like things like that, like those are moments that people really like with the show, even though certain moments might be boring. Like, say this was a whole episode on its own and it wasn't the most entertaining, that's what builds character on the show. And I think that that's really an issue so far. Again, we got this moment, really great, but I just think that overall so much happened in this episode that it's just so hard to process everything. Like, it's way too fast. Daryl also got a gift from Judith that was very random, but honestly really cool. I thought that was kind of a cool Easter egg, I guess, and connection to the original show. So yeah, pretty cool. We did learn that Judith didn't want Carol to leave, but Carol was like, well, I need to find Daryl. And so I feel like, yeah, obviously it would make sense that if Rick and Michonne were there, that Carol would say something at that point. So we do get to the scene where the man actually betrays them, and then Pourvoir shows up, and then there's some mention of like a group or something in like a previous battle that happened, and that woman actually mentions that her father knew Genet, or knew of her anyways. And so there was something there. There was a mention of like, a train and whatnot going somewhere. And so I do wonder if some of that, some of Madame Genet's story, like a previous war that happened beforehand, was a tease to something happening, I guess in season 3, because that would be an interesting connection. And Carol heard all of that. So the fact that Carol heard that tells me that that's going to be something that comes up later on, maybe later on in this season, or maybe it's going to be in season 3. But yeah, the battle happens. Carol versus Genet was awesome. Daryl takes out all the other guards and whatnot, really cool. And then we get Madame Genet's death, which I actually really liked. Like overall, I thought that her death was horrifying. Like honestly, it was actually kind of scary, like just seeing the whole thing play out. But yeah, I thought honestly that the simplicity of that and just the way it happened after, such really amazing character moments building up to that, I really liked all of that. And the only issues I really have overall when it comes to, I guess, the future now is sort of Lo Sang becoming the villain. I'm kind of okay with it because I really don't like Lo Sang. I thought I would really like the character, but I mean, he killed Isabelle. He's been doing really horrible things. And so I don't like him as a character overall. And I think the handling of certain moments, I think I would have an issue with. So in terms of Madame Genet's death, honestly, like a 10 out of 10. I really liked how all of that played out. Isabelle's death, really, really bad decision. The pacing is way too fast, and they're rushing through a lot of these storylines here. And again, it's an episode thing. I mention it all the time, but it really is an episode count thing. There's just not enough episodes to get into a lot of this here. Lo Sang becoming the villain makes a lot of sense, and honestly, I'm really happy with that, but I just think that the way it happened is what's frustrating about it. Is Pouvoir basically joins the nest, which makes absolutely no sense, because you have Pouvoir, which basically says, Madame Genet's way wasn't the way, but now there's your way. So I was like, wait, what? And so Genet's way wasn't enough, and this makes no sense. Like, what's actually happening here? This is happening way too fast. Pouvoir is aligning itself now with the nest, and I feel like the way it should have happened was, Pouvoir is basically sort of scattered everywhere. Not everyone's gonna join the nest because maybe they don't really believe in, I guess their beliefs overall, but Lo Sang is like, you know what, Madame Genet's gone. This is an opportunity to sort of unite everybody. And so he tries to unite them and actually succeeds, and he does unite everybody. And yes, we do see that happen at the end of the episode, but Pouvoir basically goes to Lo Sang and like offers to join them. So it's like, I don't know, I just, when I saw that, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, this wouldn't happen. So again, overall, this episode was the best episode because a lot happened, and I know I've been criticizing a lot of what happened in this episode, so it makes no sense for me to say that this was the best episode, but it's just because of certain moments, having Daryl and Carol together. I do like the direction overall of the story, and Lo Sang being the villain now, and they're all looking for Laurent, so now it's becoming a story where Daryl and Carol are trying to find Laurent, and then I think in episode 5 they will find him though, but you have the nest trying to find Laurent, and so I don't know where the story is going to go here. I think it makes sense now as to why they're just forced to leave now. Like, they're just going to have to leave France in general, right? So I think that's why they're probably going to go to Spain here by the end of the season. But I just think that certain decisions, it just makes no sense. And I don't understand why they chose to do certain things. Like, again, having Pouvoir just join the nest. I think that, again, you can do that overall if that's your final goal, like to have both the nest and Pouvoir actually join forces. But I think you should have had it where Lo Sang was like trying to unite them and convinces them all to join, which is basically what happened later on. But that scene beforehand where you had Pouvoir be like, Madame Genet's way wasn't the right way, but maybe your way will be. I'm like, wait, what? This makes absolutely no sense. Isabelle's death, a really bad decision, and I think that the nest battle with all the Super Walker stuff was rushed, and again, some conveniences in the very beginning of the episode. The season has that overall, and I'm interested in seeing where the story's going to go for episode 5 and 6. I think that these next episodes are going to be a little bit more of a simple story, I would say, because now there's not so much going on. You got rid of a lot of characters, and so now you can sort of focus on some of the main parts of the story. But again, I think that's why 6 episodes does not work. It just really does not work. And I'm just, seeing the Dead City trailer the other day was really awesome. I thought that that was really refreshing to see the fact that that show's going to be 8 episodes, that it feels like classic Walking Dead, that we are getting these communities, that it is a different showrunner as well. I'm just really excited for Dead City. It looks really incredible. I'm excited for the crossovers and what it means for future stories for like Rick and Michonne and just the state of like the Commonwealth and all of that. Like, that's the show I feel like to watch right now. I know season 1 wasn't like the best season, but honestly, it was a very simple story that set up the characters really well and built up that world. And I think that season 2 is going to expand on it. It's doing what Daryl Dixon season 2 should have done, which is obviously increase the episode count and then get into more of these communities instead of ending these arcs really fast and sort of handling the story in the way that they're doing. So overall, again, I really enjoyed this episode. episode. I know I complained a lot about certain moments, but it's because big moments happen in this episode, so obviously I'm gonna have some thoughts on that. But Carol and Daryl reuniting, that was really incredible, and just seeing the characters and how they really carried this episode, I thought was really incredible. So yeah, but I'm gonna leave it here. Definitely post your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.